So, huge news from the college basketball world. North Carolina star player Caleb Wilson is out indefinitely with a fractured hand. Evidently, this was a injury he sustained during the Miami game they lost on Tuesday night. Of course, they beat Duke on Saturday, then came and lost went down to Miami and lost to them on Tuesday. Wilson went out in the first half. He actually did come back in the game. They didn't think the injury was as severe, but I guess on further testing, they found this fracture. And so he's going to be out for quite a while. Um, if I had to guess, they're saying he's out indefinitely. I'm guessing he's going to miss the rest of the season and the ACC tournament. And they'll, hold him out until the NCAA tournament. I mean, if I was a coach, I'd do that, hold him out as long as possible to have him ready to go when, the games really, really matter there in the NCAA tournament. But man, this is a huge, huge story. I mean, a huge blow to North Carolina. I cannot express how important Caleb Wilson is for this team. He leads this team in every major statistical category: points, rebounds, assists. He's their guy. He is an absolute stud, top five NBA draft pick, most likely. Averages 20 points a game pretty much. This dude's a stud, just a freak of an athlete. Got size, got skill around the basket, can shoot the ball, can defend. I mean, he's a great player, and so I really, really think this limits North Carolina in a big way, not having their best player, easily their best player. And he's a freshman, but still their best player, a bona fide star for sure. And he's out indefinitely. I think he's going to miss the rest of the regular season and the ACC tournament, as I said. And so um, I don't see how North Carolina doesn't sustain several more losses here without him, because they've shown struggles even with him. They just lost to Miami the other night. He did play in that game. I know, albeit injured for a lot of it, but still lost that game. They lost to Stanford and Cal with him. Those are not good losses, and so you take him off the court, and man, this is going to be. I think this is going to be a really big struggle for them down the stretch here. Looking at their schedule, I know they still have to play Duke at the end of the season. Um, let's just look at a couple games. You got Pitt next. They should be able to handle Pitt. Pitt's a terrible team this year. But you go to NC State on Tuesday, the 17th. I don't see them winning that game. Even playing at Syracuse the following Saturday, that's a tough game. Then you got to play Louisville. That I don't think they're winning that game. Virginia Tech's going to be a tough one. They're a good team fighting for their NCAA tournament hopes. And then you got Clemson and Duke to finish the season. I mean, this is not an easy finish. I mean, you're looking at possibly losing, at least three or four more games, in my opinion. I think you're definitely losing to Clemson and Duke, in my opinion, without him. And Clemson, Duke, and Louisville. I'm saying you're losing all three of those games. And then it's a toss up with NC State, Syracuse, and Virginia Tech, all of those games. But you could lose all those. I don't think you're losing to Pittsburgh, but all those games, I don't think they're going to lose all of them, but I think they could lose several of them. And this is going to be tough without their best player. And here's the question now is, what does this do to their tournament seeding? Not just NCAA, but also, for the ACC tournament. Like, where are they going to be in the ACC tournament? But again, more importantly, where are they going to be for the NCAA tournament? I think with several more losses, you got to think it's going to take a hit to their NCAA tournament seeding. Right now, they're hovering around like the 3 or 4 line. I think if they can continue to win and somehow and even win a couple games, maybe in the ACC tournament, you're looking at a 3 seed, maybe even a 2 seed if they win the ACC tournament. I don't think that's likely, but I think the likelihood is, right now they're at hovering around the 3 or 4 line. But man, if you lose a bunch of games here down the stretch, you could be dropping to a 5, maybe even a 6. And, if you lose out, you could honestly be dropped to like a 7 line if you're North Carolina. So this is dangerous for them. So this is a huge story for the ACC, huge story for North Carolina and college basketball as a whole. But here's the question. This brings this question up now. How does the NCAA tournament committee factor in injuries? And if you look this up on the internet, you can't really find a clear answer on this. There seems to be some disagreement about this. One of the more recent articles. This was posted in 2025 by Corbin McGuire on NCAA.com. So this is like the NCAA's website. Okay, it says, the article is about debunking NCAA tournament myths or selection committee myths. And here's what one sentence it says: one late season factor that comes into play is if a star player is injured and unable to play, a team's seeding can be altered accordingly. To me, seems like what he's saying is, hey, if a star player is injured, like they they could take a hit in their seeding. Now it is kind of ambiguous. Is he saying that, okay, the committee's going to look at that and is going to, you know, take that into consideration and maybe alter their seeding some, but not, not too much? Or is he saying like, hey, if they lose a big player and he's unavailable to play, like they're gonna have to drop them in the seeding. So I guess part of this is, will Caleb Wilson return? When is he going to return? I guess that's kind of part of this. If he's available for the NCAA tournament, that information comes out. Like, how does the NCAA committee handle that? Um, to me, if you look this up on the internet, on other places, um, most answers you find is that the NCAA tournament does, in fact, consider injuries when selecting teams, especially if a significant player is out, and they're out for a significant portion of the season, they do factor that into their criteria. That's what I'm seeing mostly here on the internet here. But again, it's kind of, that one quote I read is kind of ambiguous. How do they handle these injuries? Um, because if you lose the games, your team technically still lost the games, but you lost them without your best player. And if you're in North Carolina's situation here, I think injuries have to matter. I think this has to matter. I think you know not having Caleb Wilson turns North Carolina into a completely different team. And if he's going to be available for the NCAA tournament, I think that has to make a difference, right? Like you can clearly see that he is a huge part of this team. And when he's not on the court, this team is going to struggle. This dude plays a ton of minutes. He's a great player. And without him on the court, I think they're going to struggle. And that has to matter, right? Like, I know you can't project, okay, how many wins would they have had, with him on the court, but like clearly this team is a better team with him. And that to me has to matter. Um, I saw an article the other day from a guy on Yahoo Sports, and I disagreed with it. And yes, we're Alabama fans. This was about Alabama, so maybe there's some bias here. But I'm trying not to be biased because I think this should apply to any team. You know, we all know that Charles Bediako for Alabama, the G League player, came down and played 5 games, and there's a big fuss about that. And I think there should have been, and I'm glad the judge ruled against Bediako, to be honest. Um, but a lot of people have been throwing out the question, okay, now that Bediako is off the team, what do they do with Alabama's wins with Bediako? Alabama won 3 games, good wins against Missouri, Texas A&M, and Auburn with Bediako on the court. How does the NCAA factor those in? And some are fighting for them to, pretty much dismiss those wins or invalidate those wins. And I kind of understand why people feel that way. But Nate Oates came out and basically said, okay, if they're going to invalidate those wins, well, what are they going to do with the games where we were missing players? Alabama has had one player who's played in every game this season, all 25, 26 games, whatever it is at this point. One player, and that's Houston Millette, who's more like a role player. He's played all 25 games, no one else has. So, like against Vanderbilt, Alabama lost that game at Vanderbilt. They were missing their starting center, Aiden Sherrill. LeBaron Philon, SEC Player of the Year candidate, went out early in the second half of that game. Do they factor that in? They lost to Tennessee when they were missing, Alabama did, missing 2 starters. And there's been game after game where like this player's missing and that player's missing. So like Nate Oates brought that up in like a press conference, and this guy was basically saying on Yahoo Sports, writing about this, complaining, saying that Nate Oates was basically complaining and making excuses for his team losing games. And I didn't see it that way because, right, I think this should be factored in. Like, if players are missing and unavailable, that should factor into, the tournament's seeding decisions. if a team loses a game, on the road without a starting center, or if North Carolina goes on to lose some games without Caleb Wilson, I think there has to be some type of weight applied to that missing player. And I think they shouldn't be punished as much for missing a star player, for missing a player that is just incredibly important to the team. And I think this applies to everybody, not just Alabama, not just to North Carolina. If a team's missing players, that needs to matter, right? Like that changes things for the team. And especially if that player is going to be available come NCAA tournament time, they're going to have that player back. I think this has to matter. And so I hope the NCAA tournament committee doesn't punish teams for missing players. I know the common excuse here is like, oh, well, that's part of the game. Injuries are part of the game and it's next man up. And it's like, yeah, it's part of the game. What's the point there? Like nobody says anything else. It's just like injuries are a part of the game. Somehow that just like invalidates, injuries. And it's like, well, that doesn't nullify injuries. It doesn't make them unimportant just by saying it's part of the game. You know, yes, it's part of the game. It happens to every team, but not every team misses a Caleb Wilson. Not every team has injuries like the injury bug, like Alabama. I get injuries are a part of the game, but that doesn't invalidate them or, make them unimportant, right? I think the NCAA tournament committee has to consider these things, factor them into seeding, and make the right decisions for these teams based upon what they have done with their entire roster. Um, I hope they do that. If they don't, I think it's a mistake, and I think that you're kind of punishing teams for having some misfortune. So let me know if you disagree with that. Let me know if you agree with it. What do you think the NCAA tournament committee should do? Um, but I'm curious to see how North Carolina does. We'll just have to watch them down the stretch and see what the NCAA tournament committee does with them.